Sally Kirkman, and I'm here with my friend and fellow astrologer Christina Rodenbeck to talk to you about the astrology of the month ahead. My website is sallykirkman.com and Christina's is oxfordastrologer.com. And we both write horoscopes, subscription service, which are brilliant. Christina does a monthly and I do a weekly, so please do go and check them out. And how are we, Christina? How's the month been? I mean, that kind of, what sort of question is that with what's going on in the world? But anyway, how's it been?
Well, you know, well, it's been fine. I've had my birthday, of course, and I am pretty much surfing this Neptune Jupiter thing pretty well because I'm very Piscean, so it's my world, so to speak. However, it's impossible not to be thinking about what's happening not very far from us all the time, and wondering how to help and when these people are going to stop it, etc. So it's overwhelming, really, what's happening in Ukraine. And of course one wants to be of practical use, but also spiritual. How is it that we can, it sounds so you don't want to be narcissistic and say, how can what spiritual things that we do is going to be so helpful, but on the other hand, it is important to be thinking about loving thoughts, I think, and reminding ourselves of that love is the answer, and these people are wrong.
Yeah, that's lovely. I really like that, actually. Compassion, for it to bring out the compassion. And also, when you were talking, I thought, you did the brilliant podcast with Victor Oliver and Lynn Bell, looking at the charts relating to the war, and that was a very practical, spiritual, bringing the two together. So I think that was really helpful too. It has been an extraordinary time, actually, hasn't it? And very emotional, I think, for a lot of people. Well, I don't think if you haven't felt emotional about what's going on, then you probably need to check your pulse, actually. I mean, it's it's been that kind of world experience. On a personal level, I've actually not really enjoyed Pisces season, if I'm honest. I've been quite unclear a lot of the time, sort of a bit uncertain and confused. There's that been going on, but actually at the same time, quite creative too. A lot of ideas going around, but just not being able to sort of channel or focus them particularly well. So it has, and doing a lot of support, actually. Support of friends who are finding, this situation difficult. And again, therefore, kind of looking at this how you can help on individual level, actually, as well as, the bigger situation.
Yeah, a lot of people have found this Pisces energy very dissipating, and people are finding, literally finding it that they're physically really tired. And I would just like to mention that if you have been feeling tired, Neptune there's been a Sun Neptune conjunction in the past few days, which is tiring. It can be really draining, especially say for Leo, but Aries, lots of people. So if you've been needing to sleep a lot, do so. Don't hold back, do so. That's what you're supposed to be doing. And we've been through, we're still within it, actually, as we're speaking, the Sun Neptune conjunction, which seems to me to be even more powerful this year than usual. And that is a time not to be pushing forward with the plans, but just to be here now, be in the moment.
I agree. And I think also the other way it's played out is a lot of people not sleeping well. Neptune is it's the dream world, isn't it? On the Sun Neptune, my dreams were just so busy and intense that I woke up feeling quite tired from, my dream world. So there's a lot going on subconsciously. on the inner level I think that's processing as well.
And I would say personally and collectively on that inner level, I didn't sleep at all that night, actually, the night of the Neptune Sun conjunction.
Yeah.
And then I slept really well the night afterwards. So it was a night but I did wake up with, when I didn't sleep because I had woken up in the middle of the night with an intense feeling of connection to another world, to the other side, which was neither good nor bad, but just really interesting.
I mean, that's interesting, isn't it? Because Pisces is, it's the last sign of the zodiac. The sun's been all the way around, so it is very much connected to the collective unconscious and the world beyond the self. March the 13th was that Sun Neptune, if other people are kind of locating that in their lives.
It's also, a lot of souls are departing now because of this war.
Yeah.
And so the gates are open.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not only are we having these mass movements of people around the world, but we're also having a movement of souls, which has been very strong in the last few years. I do think that is a theme of 2022 also. Yeah.
So it's unsettling, isn't it? It's an unsettling time actually as well. Individually and collectively again. So
go on.
I was going to say, how's it going to be moving into Aries season?
Well, I think that for a lot of people, it's going to feel like a little bit more clear. There's going to be clarity coming out. I think we should look at the chart of the equinox. Do you want to do that now, or do you want to have a little talk about Aries people first?
Let's have a little talk about Aries, shall we? Yeah. First sign of the zodiac, fire sign. So you move from, this sort of boundless water sign, the sun completes its journey around the zodiac, into a fire sign, first sign, initiating, get up and go. And, Aries ascendant here, very kind of closely attuned to Aries energy, actually, I think. It's fast, it's speedy, impulsive, impatient, sometimes tactless, leaping in.
I also think that you're going from the kind of blurriness of Pisces to one-pointedness. I mean, I think of Aries as a very one-pointed sign, very focused, which can, it's got this good side and a bad side, but maybe helpful now, especially if you happen to be a person who is, if you're a fixed sign, it's been quite difficult the last, this early part of this year. And if you're a fire sign, it's been very dank because there's been no fire. So I think it's going to be helpful for all of those people, both the fixed and the fire in particular. So mutable people have managed to mutable through all this, they move through. And air people have managed to sort of think through this, and water people are feeling through this. But, the fire people have been feeling very frustrated, I think.
Yeah, so Aries, Leo, Sagittarius. I mean, I think this is, the sun's move into Aries is going to enliven that. I was kind of looking, I was thinking, right, which Aries are in the news? And always kind of wanting to find someone new. But actually, I ended up looking at Diana Ross.
Really?
Yes, who is 77. But I sort of looked at her because I saw that the BAFTAs happened and she introduced it singing, one of the Bond songs, Diamonds Are Forever. And then kind of thought, well, let's just check out her chart and saw that she's headlining Glastonbury this year. Yes, she's taking the legend spot. So
really? Okay, I wrote a piece about her a while ago, about her and Lilith. She's got a really interesting Black Moon Lilith in her chart.
Has she? Oh, that's interesting.
I will dig it out and I'll put a link on the bottom of this thing. I can't remember what I said, but she's an interesting person.
Okay, I know I had a quick look at her chart. I didn't notice what Lilith was doing. I mean, she's Scorpio rising, but what I did notice is that her sun is at 6 degrees Aries. So when she's headlining Glastonbury, which for those who aren't in you know, the UK, it's kind of the biggest music festival of the year. She's got Jupiter on her sun. She's
Oh,
moved
fantastic.
into Aries, and it's going to be on her sun when she's headlining Glastonbury. So here she is at 77. Wow, you know, back in the limelight. I thought that was great.
That's amazing and
Mm.
wonderful,
Mm.
actually. And she's got that channeling thing that some Aries have of just somehow seeming to, there's a lot of actors and actresses with who are Aries on there.
Mm.
And there's something about Aries, which if they can kind of let go and just let the spirit come in or whatever that just comes in and out of them, they're like these amazing channelers
Yeah.
of psychic energy. And I do think Diana Ross has kind of got that when she's on, hasn't she?
Yeah, she has, and she has got sun opposite Neptune actually as well.
Oh,
So
there you go. There's the
even,
glamorous, you
it
know.
even intensifies it, doesn't it? But I agree, and I think that is, you know, again, with I think what's can be lovely about Aries as well is there's a real uninhibited side of Aries, isn't it? I mean, they're the real kind of divas of the world, you know, Lady Gaga, Elton John, that Mariah Carey. I mean, sometimes quite tricky characters, but there is something about that. It's like throw away all the inhibitions. Here I am, you know. It's kind of it's wonderful. So they make good superstars, don't
yeah.
they?
I always think that the contrast between Gaga and Madonna is always an interesting Leo Aries contrast.
Mm.
Because Gaga, there's something about her, like, first of all, she can really sing, right? But also there's a loss of inhibition that she seems to be able to do, which you never really feel with Madonna. She's always very calculating. But with Gaga, and that I think that's really Aries, that ability just to let go and just to be absolutely true to, you know, true to yourself, true to whatever it is. And you see that in those performers.
Yeah. So I mean, that's an interesting side of Aries, isn't it? I really like that side. And I do think, you know, as we're moving into Aries season, it is about, you know, it's stop swimming around in circles. Let's do it, you know.
I mean, the one-pointedness of Aries is, you know, has its other side, which is being you know, not being able to see other people's points of view.
Well, yeah, and that's where Aries needs to learn from its opposite star sign Libra. Aries aren't very good at compromising very often. They like to win as well, want to be first. So I agree. Yeah, it's me, isn't it?
They can throw something into competition when there is no competition. That's an Aries thing to do. Suddenly there's this competition going on. You think, where did that come from? Oh, it's the Aries doing their thing, right? And that's sometimes useful because it pushes people forward. It makes people go ahead. You know, why do you have prizes? You know, why do you have sports? Well, just because it pushes people forward. But sometimes it's not helpful.
No, agreed.
And sometimes there's no winner. Can I just go back to our war in Ukraine? Everybody's going to lose from that.
Yeah.
And war, it's the sign, it's a warrior sign as well.
It is. Ruled by Mars, god of war. You know, so soldiers, firefighters, heroes as well. I mean, it's, you know, again, the best side of that is Aries will often defend the underdog. They'll fight for other people. But it's a fighting sign, Aries.
It's brave. I mean, you know, that's a bravery about Aries. And that's, again, it's not the calculating bravery of Scorpio. It's, is it brave or is it foolhardy, you know? Because there's also that, like, just jumping into stuff without thinking. Without thinking things through, which is very Aries as well. I'll just do this. Oh, I'll just do that. They do eventually learn from their experiences.
Well, they do, and they're very good at starting things. I mean, Aries are great to get things going, but not always so good at completing them because they get bored quickly too, or frustrated. So, you know, you need someone else on your team if there's an Aries.
Yeah, and actually really good for getting other people started too, for motivating people. And saying, come on, let's do it. You know, that's
motivating or bullying.
Okay.
Just get on with it, you know. Really?
So where are we? Let's talk about this equinox. I'll get this chart up.
Get the chart up. We're going to put the chart up for those who are watching the video rather than the podcast, but we'll hopefully explain it all so it's clear on the podcast. It's always interesting just to look at the chart. Because often the equinox chart or the solstice chart is meant to give a flavor of what's coming in the next 3 months, isn't it? It can be a symbol of that moment in time.
Yeah, and the equinox chart is when the sun is at 0 Aries. Yeah. And this year it's on the 20th of March.
Yeah.
Usually it's on the 20th of March. Sometimes it's on the 21st, isn't it? It's weird that the moon is at 2954 of Libra.
Yeah, which is interesting, isn't it? Right at the end of Libra, and in a kind of quincunx to the sun, which is often a blind spot. It's what's not being seen. Really nearly in Scorpio, the moon, but not just holding out in Libra. I don't know quite what to make of that. Do you have a sense of what it might be about?
Yeah, looking at that, I hate to say it, but I think we're all keep on circling back to this war, the war in Ukraine, and whether that's going to ripple out, how that's going to affect all of us in many different ways. Even if you're on the other side of the world, this may have an effect on your it's going to have an effect on agriculture around the world, interestingly enough. And it will have an effect on you even if you live far away. So I'm just thinking about that. The reason I bring that up is because this is a warrior sign, and this is the beginning of a war. We're at the beginning of a war, and Libra is the sign of peace and negotiations.
Yeah, true.
And it would have been, so is it just after? Yeah, the full moon was previously, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was the 18th of March, so just before the equinox.
Which would have been across Pisces, Virgo.
Yeah.
So the moon is moving away from this full moon situation with the sun being at full stretch, beginning to close towards the sun. And I think that it's just moving into Scorpio, as you say. It will move into Scorpio within an hour probably from then, or maybe a couple, but soon. And that is the emotions, the desire. Maybe there may have been an opportunity for negotiation just before then. But those negotiations that opportunity may be disappearing. Gosh, I'm sounding really gloomy, but just because it's about to go into Scorpio, which is the other Mars-ruled warrior sign.
And often also looking at these charts, interestingly, the moon is the people, and the sun is often the leaders. So the sun, is in Aries. It's about winning, isn't it? Again, the sun in Aries, where the moon in Libra really, as you say, wants to negotiate, wants peace. So it's a tricky quincunx. It is a blind spot, I think, a real blind spot.
Yeah, and the leaders may not be seeing the people. The other interesting thing about this chart is that the moon is ruled by Venus in this chart, and the sun is ruled by Mars, which are still in conjunction on the 20th of March. So those two are actually talking. It does suggest some kind of potential for possibly for negotiation, possibly peace, and it does talk of alliances, I think, as well.
Yeah, they stay kind of side by side in Aquarius really until early April, when they move into Pisces, and then Venus kind of quickly skips away from Mars. But there is a possibility, isn't there, of alliances with the Venus-Mars, whatever they mean. Also, interestingly, the nodes, the North Node, South Node axis is on the midheaven, the MCIC, which, here's the big themes really: land, what it's going to do to food, the economy. This really powerful eclipse cycle, the nodal cycle that started last year and will move into 2023 is kind of really firmly positioned on this chart.
I was interested this morning, I was listening to the news, and the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, used a word, I can't remember what it was in German, Zeit something, but what it translates as a turning point in history, an epochal turning point. And they had a great German compound word for this. And he said, 24th of February was a world turning point, which is the kind of word that we would use as astrologers as well. This is we're at a world turning point.
Yeah.
And I do feel that this nodal axis of across Taurus and Scorpio is a very powerful one. And it's a shift in power as well. Scorpio is a sign that's about power, and there's a loss of power on one side and maybe a gaining of power on the other. So we're seeing the power shifts across the globe. Lots of people are making predictions in different directions. I don't just mean astrologers, but political scientists, etc., commentators. Who's going to win from this war? Of course, it's not really like, it's the wrong way to look at it, to see this as a thing that has winners and losers. There may be people who come out, there may be nations that come out more powerful from this, but I wouldn't be surprised if everybody ends up suffering loss. And that we're going through, as you say, with that Taurus North Node, that is about, has been in the past about shifts in ownership of land.
Yeah.
So, the partition of India is on that axis. And the 6-day war in Israel is on that axis. So, it's an interesting axis.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the other thing I think to note on the equinox chart is it's a Virgo ascendant. So, the ruling planet is Mercury in Pisces, very dreamy Mercury. But interestingly, again, going to the Jupiter-Neptune. So, we've got the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction is the big theme, really, of the month we're moving into. And we've had the sun triggering it in March. And just as we move into, after the equinox, the Mercury will conjunct Jupiter and then conjunct Neptune very quickly, actually. I think it's the 21st and 23rd of March. So again, picking up this major Jupiter-Neptune theme.
And weaving them together before they even make their conjunction.
Yeah.
But they're conjunct, this Jupiter-Neptune, they're already in, this counts as a conjunction. And it has over and over again been repeated since earlier in March. And I think there's a lot of hope in there.
I do.
I think there's a lot of hope for, not just compassion, which sometimes can sound, compassion in a strong way, not in a weak way, but also about maybe coming together and understanding that this is one world.
Yeah, because Jupiter's the global planet, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is the global planet. And I just, for your introduction actually to this to this podcast, I think was very relevant of the Mercury, Jupiter, Neptune, what you were saying as a Pisces. I mean, you were talking about, the dreams and waking up with this real theme of connection. It's I think a lot of people, but particularly Pisces, are able to sort of really tap into this at the moment, tapping into that kind of the dream world, the collective unconscious, the need for unity, actually,
that human beings, we're all brothers and sisters. We are all brothers and sisters. And that's also Mercury, which is the sign of the siblings, coming together with Jupiter. And these are our brothers and sisters are fighting each other, and they need to stop, and that the whole planet, unless we need to work together. And that feeling of unity is a beautiful thing. Not something to be feared. It's beautiful. And sometimes it's been like this for many years now. You just feel like this is the last gasp of imperialist you know, patriarchal hegemony, you know, as this another kind of iteration of it? Are we going to go on and on with this? And it's interesting seeing this hugely imperialist act going on. And I have to say, one of the things that really struck me at the beginning of this was just thinking, guys, men, just stop it, you know, stop doing that man thing and think differently about how the world can be. It doesn't have to be this competition. We need to learn to share.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, that this, you know, the Jupiter-Neptune is going to be such a huge theme during Aries season.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of like, it feels like it's, you know, it's needed. I mean, the actual conjunction's on April the 12th, but we're just getting these sort of waves of it coming through. So, you know, and wherever it falls in, you know, in your horoscope, what's the big dream, or what's the, you know, this connecting wave?
What do you have to share?
Yeah.
It may literally be your house, you know, if you're hosting refugees.
Yeah, and that would fit in particular for Sagittarius, because this is happening in your home sector.
Yeah, exactly. And it's that idea of sharing, you know, how is it going to be? Or for Gemini, you know, is it just sharing your ideas, you know, or broadcasting, being a journal, you know, because of course it's Gemini is the sign of a journalist. This is going to be a big story for many journalists, you know, it's going to make them. You've got Jupiter at the top of your chart, you know, and it's for most of us, this is an overwhelming energy, this Jupiter-Neptune energy approaching, and that you can see here, and that we're talking about now with Mercury coming towards it at the equinox. And we need to be prepared, you know, for a big wave. I mean, that we're already in, and to try and, you know, keep your head above water.
Yeah. I mean, there is, you know, it is a big wave. So it's that poem, Not Waving But Drowning. I love that kind of phrase, not waving but drowning. You know, are you waving, or are they seeking help?
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of relevant for Virgo in a way, because again, Mercury's your planet, it's in your 7th house. Who might need help? Literally check if they're waving or if they're drowning. I mean, who do you need to be there for? You know, who do you need to save with that? Or maybe you're going to fall madly in love.
Yeah, well, yes. I mean, Virgo, has Virgo not fallen in love yet? They've had so much love stuff over the last a few years, haven't they? It's like, come on, Virgos. You know?
If you haven't yet, I mean, Neptune's been in your relationship sector since 2012. If you haven't yet, this is your big moment. Just lose yourself, let go of control. This is the time, you know, the uninhibited Virgo is needed. Or the artist, the creative too. I mean, it's a very creative and artistic combination as well in Pisces.
It's amazing for Scorpios. I mean,
yes.
This fantastic conjunction for Scorpios, isn't it? And that's going to be creative in some way, or to do with your kids, or just delightful luxury, fun, something that you can lose yourself in a beautiful way, you know. And you should be thinking about this and talking about this, you know, now, you know, getting ready for that. I actually think Scorpio has one of the best angles on this whole Jupiter-Neptune thing, because it's in the 5th house, which is a nice place to host anything. And it's not right on your sun, you know. It's sometimes these things are much easier to deal with when they're at a trine, which means when they're at a 120-degree angle to your sun. It's much smoother for the Scorpios and Cancerians.
Yeah, I was going to say for the other water sign. Interesting, isn't it, that, you know, as we move into this month and, you know, Mercury is picking up the Jupiter-Neptune theme, actually Scorpio's planet Mars, I mean, it's next to Venus, so there's the theme of love again, but it's going to clash with Uranus. I mean, it's running into the square with Uranus at the same time. I mean, that, you know, if you look at that symbolism, very simply, it could be, you know, leaving one relationship to move into another, couldn't it? It could be the trigger that, you know, Mars and Uranus are often about. It can be about splitting off. Uranus in Scorpio's relationship sector. So, you know, there's a theme also of impulsive moves as we move into Aries season. Mars is really revving that up. You know, this theme of kind of just doing stuff and splitting, moving on, moving away to get that beauty of the Jupiter-Neptune, to move towards something that's more kind of beautiful or inclusive or romantic or dreamy. It's quite interesting sort of conjunct of astrology, isn't it, going on?
Well, it is, isn't it? I mean, because we've got these little, as you say, that square that's going on between Venus, Mars, and Uranus is, you know, that is splitting, but it's also could be coming together. You don't know with the Uranus which way it's going to go.
True.
I've seen it go either way. Suddenly people fall madly in love with the Uranus square. It's like, boom, I didn't realize that my best friend was actually someone I was madly in love with. You know, I think that's especially true maybe for Taurians. They may suddenly, you know, wake up and realize that that person that they completely ignored is actually fabulous. And I think it's also true. I'm just thinking about Leos with this long period of Mars and Venus in their sign of relationship. And now it's making the square to Uranus. That could be a split. You're right. It could be leaving a relationship, but it also, as well, equally, and this is what's funny about astrology, is that because it's a polarity, you know, it can go either way. Equally, it may be love at first sight. You see someone.
Yeah.
You know? And because we're talking about this equinox, we're looking at the equinox chart, that's a theme, you know, for the next 3 months. It tells us a little bit about the next 3 months, not just the next few days. Is these, for Leos, you see many possible exciting encounters or ones that change the direction of your life.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very Uranian thing. You think you're going in one direction, then suddenly you meet someone or you encounter an idea that changes your direction. And for Leos, this is all at the top of the chart. You know, it's a change, it's a switch in direction. It's something or someone, and it gets that Uranus has been there for a while, several years, and it'll be there for several years more, but it's particularly triggered at the moment.
And it's not just personal, is it? It's professional too, because for Leo's, Uranus is in Taurus in your career sector. So it's the people you meet that change the direction of your career, future path, vocation as well. It's quite an interesting astrology, what's going on there.
Just one last thing on this equinox. I think it's interesting that the sun is in the 8th, just barely in the 8th, and that the Jupiter-Neptune is in the 7th. So there's a lot of sort of people wafting around. And again, that sun in the 8th is a focus on the esoteric or on debt or on those taboo things that we don't like talking about. And maybe a collective focus on that, or a collective light on that.
Yeah. Yeah, the sun does bring things to light, doesn't it?
The things that are down there, dark in the shade, into light. And actually, if you look at this chart, the moon is making an exact square to Pluto as well, which is interesting.
Yeah.
In that one, and that fits in with these themes of debt and extreme wealth as well.
Yeah.
And
which is really being exposed at the moment, isn't it? Really exposed. The imbalance of money economy.
Yeah.
You know,
yet again, you know, how many times do we need this sort of driven home? I'll just put up this chart for the new moon on the 1st of April.
Yeah, lovely.
If I can figure out how to do it.
Which is quite a nice new moon, actually. I mean, it's you know, it's got Mercury is in Aries by then, whizzing along, little Mercury at the moment. You know, it's when Mercury is fast, it goes through a star sign in 2 weeks. And we're not, I don't know when the next retrograde phase is, but certainly not now. So yeah, I mean, on the new moon, I mean, look at that for Aries. If you want to launch something, if you want to start something, if you want to initiate something, grab that new moon date, the 1st of April. Speak up, reach out, make a phone call, send a text, whatever. Just be fast and do it. I mean, it's a brilliant new moon for taking action. You know, and ideas, it feels like kind of generating ideas too. So, I mean, that's also for probably Aquarius as well. It's a good new moon for generating ideas, kind of getting things moving, making suggestions. Yeah, it's quick, isn't it? There's a quick emphasis.
I mean, the whole month is fast. And last month was fast too. So March was fast. April's going to be fast. May is going to be fast. So we're kind of moving very, very quickly. Yeah, it's funny. I wouldn't necessarily start something on that new moon. I'd start it like a few days later.
Okay.
Yeah. I say that because it does make a conjunction with Chiron. So I would start it if I was starting like the Red Cross or something that's helpful to other people, you know, it's ironic. But I would be slightly cautious, I think, around that. You know, there's a lot going on in Aries there, because it's also making a conjunction to Pallas Athena too, who is, you know, the goddess of wisdom.
Yep.
Yeah, so and by then Mars and Venus have started to move apart by the 1st of April. They're both still in Aquarius.
Yeah.
But that long embrace that they've had is now pretty much over for another year, actually.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that they also have got Saturn sort of sitting in between them now. It's like the dad has come along. It's like Romeo and Juliet, just stop it now. Or not, maybe not Romeo and Juliet because they're not dead, but you know, it's like the dad has put them apart. There's a wall between them, and that is Saturn in Aquarius between those two lovers has come up. There's some boundary has gone up, and
yeah.
Or you can say there's you know, they've made a commitment and now they're moving on. So they've done the marriage, and now one can move to Australia and the other one can move to sunny California.
Yeah, so it's kind of going to be an interesting one, isn't it, for Aquarius, also Leo, relationship sector, and Libra, romance sector. So if you're in some kind of I don't know, relationship entanglement or whatever, you know, who's running away or who's chasing after. It's a kind of nice little dance that's going on in a way. But yeah, what's the Saturn? What does the Saturn represent? I mean, that Mars-Saturn conjunction's on the 5th of April. You know, and that can Mars, I mean, I have a Mars-Saturn opposition, so it can work either way. Sometimes it slams on the brakes, you know, the Saturn, which is strong in Aquarius, can stop the Mars getting ahead. But sometimes it's about determination, commitment, pushing through, you know, really committing to what you want to do, really, you know, moving things forward in a good way. Going to be interesting for Taurus, that in particular, as it's in your career sector. So who's helping you, who's stopping you is something to look at, and where's your commitment around work and next steps too.
I think it's pretty good for Taurus, actually. You know, because Saturn in the 10th, who doesn't like that? You know, this is the harvest of all your hard work, and Mars is pushing you ahead with that. I have a Mars-Saturn conjunction in my chart, actually, similar, you know, a few degrees apart like this, almost exactly similar. And I value it quite a lot. I think it gives a lot of grit to a chart. You know, it has a bad reputation, Mars-Saturn aspects.
They're the two malefics coming together, aren't they? But as with all the planets, you know, how do you work with them too? I mean, what's their strengths?
Well, as I say, it's determination, commitment, pushing through, finishing stuff off.
Yeah.
So this is you know, with all that other stuff. So there's something starting with the Aries energy this month, but there's this commitment to finishing things off as well. That's actually really healthy and good. And that's maybe helped a lot by the Mars-Saturn conjunction, which is kind of ongoing. I mean, as you say, it's exact on the 5th, but you know, there they are close together right on that new moon. So anyway, it's like, what are you finishing off? What projects can you put to bed? So that then you can start again when Mars gets on the other side of that Saturn. And I think that's kind of, that works for everyone, doesn't it? So for example, you know, Virgo, that's in your house of work. You know, what work project are you going to finish?
And for Cancer, Capricorn, it's about money actually, or resources. You know, it's in the financial axis of the horoscope as well. So possibly a good time to be, you know, thinking about contracts and deals with that Mars Saturn, committing to something.
Yeah, and I would say that, you know, that pretty much that whole first week of April and last week of March are really good for this, like completions, and making commitments, and also cutting out the you know, getting out of commitments that you don't want to make. At the same time, you're focused on the correct ones. That's another thing that Mars brings, is focus. And together, Mars and Saturn are practical and can actually make a difference. And one of the things that I think has been really kind of worrying about the Saturn in Aquarius is that Aquarius is this sign of fixed air, fixed ideas, fixed concepts. And Saturn went into Aquarius, when was it? December 2020.
Yep.
And we are in a land of very fixed, people are very fixed in their ideas. And actually Mars may come along and help us to unfix some of those ideas.
Interesting. And also, I mean, looking at this gives you a real sense that, you know, for the first time in ages, Saturn and Uranus are just moving a part of their square, which dominated last year as well. So again, you know, there's things that have held quite firm, a sort of, there's a chance of more freedom or more movement maybe.
I think of thinking things in a different way is how I would put it. Having a new point of view, having a different point of view, and that applies across the board as well. Although, you know, possibly particularly to Gemini, you get some new ideas coming in. I mean, Gemini is having a fantastic time in terms of thoughts, you know, in this month, and falling in love with subjects that they're doing. I know my young Gemini has realized that she just loves philosophy. She's mad on philosophy, and that she's realized that as Mars and Venus have been moving through that 9th house for Geminis. And that her, you know, her mind is kind of exploded. And of course, it's a fantastic example of, you know, philosophy is a system, is about systems of ideas, systems of thought. That is Saturn in Aquarius.
And also, I mean, networking, because of the Mercury during this new moon for Gemini in Aries, friendships, groups. I mean, I know, you know, another Gemini friend of mine who's kind of, her work's just really taken off. And she's doing, you know, she's needing to do a lot of networking and delegation and teamwork, actually. And fast, you know, needing to sort things out and fast. So quite interesting for Gemini. Interesting new moon, though, isn't it? I mean, there's potential in it, definitely. I think there's real potential in this new moon. Do we want to look at, I'm just aware of the time, do we want to look, move on a bit and look at maybe the full moon, or is there more you want to say on this?
The only other thing I want to say is for Libras, this is, you know, you're still in this love potential, you know, you really are. And, you know, during this month with the sun in Aries, which is lighting up your relationships, and Venus and Mars in your romance sector, come on, Libra, you know, this is about love and fun and having fun with your relationships and being with fun people. You know, it doesn't all have to be hard work.
And it's not just one relationship either, I'd say.
Loads, right?
In true Libra style, actually.
Yeah. Oh, I can't decide. Yeah.
It's just sort of date lots of people and see what happens. It's that kind of vibe, actually, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's really, I envy them as Libras. They're obviously having they could have a really fun time if they wanted to.
I hope they are. I hope they are, because it's been quite, you know.
I'm going to stick up the full moon, 16th.
Yeah. 16th of April. So I just wanted to say something about, this full moon, because it's the full moons that determine Easter for those of us who celebrate Easter, isn't it? It's the first full moon after the equinox, and this falls on a Saturday. Then Easter Sunday is the next Sunday. So that's why Easter is so late this year. It's Easter Sunday is going to be April the 17th. So I love that it's to do with the moons. The full moons determine the dates of the Easter end.
And you can see that Easter is literally going to be late. Why? Because this is a full moon at 26 degrees. So it's late degrees of Libra. So it's 46 of Libra, which tells you, okay, Easter's late. And it makes a lovely square to Pluto there. That's quite a tough aspect, isn't it? We haven't really talked about how there's so much energy. There's been so much energy in Capricorn over the last few years, and now most of it's kind of gone, except for Pluto still there working away in Capricorn. But if you are a Capricorn, this full moon seems to be rather kind of focused on you. Something's may happen for Capricorn. It may be to do with your career, or it may be to do with your home life, but it may turn out to be quite a pivotal full moon in the whole year, actually, for Capricorns.
Yeah, either probably around an ending, or kind of needing to sort of step up and be more powerful. I mean, again, with Pluto, a symbol doesn't mean just one thing. It has these different sides to it. It's interesting, because I was just about to say, for Libras, when we were looking at the new moon, and we were talking about them having, potentially a lovely time with different people. And I was saying, and they need it because of this difficulty they've had with Pluto in their 4th house. That's been a tough transit for many Libras. So again, there could be something pivotal for Libras around family, home, family, past, around this full moon.
Or literally, and that can manifest very literally. I'm just thinking about a Libra I know who literally had stuff under her house. I can't remember what that gas is called, that natural, that actually can cause a lot of problems, or a ghost in the house, or being homeless, not being settled, not feeling settled. Or a difficult neighbor or something may have been kind of very disruptive for Librans. So it's interesting for those cardinal signs to think, what's that difficult Pluto thing been, over the last many years, and focus on it. And it's nearly gone, by the way. Next year Pluto leaves Capricorn for good. That whole issue is resolving itself.
Yeah, it is. And it's a very pivotal full moon, this one as well, for Cancerians. I mean, I think the full moons are really important for Cancer anyway, but this is, the sun and moon across the foundations of your horoscope. It's about where you're heading, where you come from. And what's that Pluto? Is it, someone who's been absent, or is it someone who's played quite a powerful, a difficult role in your life? And again, around this full moon, things really coming to a head, needing to make some decisions to leave something behind and kind of start afresh.
Yeah, and it may be to do with where you live. For Cancerians, I'm just thinking about Cancerians I've, over the last 10 years or so, who've quite a few I know have had no partnership while Pluto's been going through their 7th house, in the opposite sign. They've been on their own, and they've kind of managed to adjust to that, it's transformed their relationships essentially. But that whole learning process that you've been through, that's about relationship for Cancerians, is reaching an ending now. You've actually done all the work, done a lot of the work. And that may result in maybe a house move or a career move now. It's interesting. It's a powerful, it really is quite a powerful full moon. And is it the last one before the eclipses, or the next one's eclipses?
It is there's an eclipse next month is eclipse month.
Yeah. Okay.
So, Taurus. I mean, they're Taurus Scorpio, aren't they? So yeah, Taurus month is eclipses. So does feel like kind of the end of an era, this full moon.
It does, doesn't it? And the end of an era which one would welcome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Putting something to bed, or putting something that's been difficult in your life behind you. So quite an interesting full moon, this one, really pivotal.
Yeah, and the other thing that this full moon does, speaking of, if you look at the chart, it makes an aspect also to Juno, the planet of partnerships. In Aquarius, and she's been in Aquarius. She's actually had a chat with Venus, she's had a chat with Mars, she's had a chat with Saturn, right? And Juno is about partnerships, about contracts, and I think she's pretty comfortable actually in Aquarius. And it's interesting that she's making some kind of aspect to this full moon, and it may be, as you say, the end of a contract that is, it may be not literally a piece of paper, it may be some kind of psychic contract that you've fulfilled. And I think that's particularly true of, well, a lot of it. This does affect quite a few different signs. So again, I'm interested with the Cancerians that there may be some kind of unsaid contract that you're finishing, a psychic karmic contract. I say that partly because it's Juno's somewhat conjunct to conjoining Saturn at that point. And for Cancerians, it's at an interesting angle to your sun, so.
Yep. And I think for Leo's, looking at that with regard to relationships too, personal and professional, but not psychic, more contracts.
Yeah, just straight contracts.
Straight contracts.
Yeah, marriage. Boom. Yeah. That's who it is for Leo.
Yeah. And so we should also just, I mean, we talked a bit about the Jupiter-Neptune at the beginning, didn't we? Because of, the conjunction with Mercury that starts this month. But, this full moon, they're very close still, and they actually make the conjunction on 12th of April. I wonder actually, sometimes with these bigger conjunctions, they're not so always date specific. We're already in this Jupiter-Neptune, aren't we? And it's actually when the Jupiter-Neptune gets triggered. So, when the sun comes along, as it has done, and then Mercury, and then also Venus and Mars will catch up with them. It's more those dates, really, when you it gets brought to life and you see what it's about, you see what it means. So the actual date itself may not be, that significant, that important. Could be.
I agree. It probably might be as well, but we've already seen at the new moon in Pisces, right? The new moon in Pisces went from the sun to Jupiter to Neptune, and that was at the beginning of March. We saw those first huge waves of refugees starting to come. Then the sun went through, and we're up to then the sun actually joined those two, triggering that conjunction, and we've seen that we're up to 2.5 million people on the move. So the actual conjunction needs to be triggered, and it's going to be triggered later. Next time we talk, it will be making conjunction with Venus, which is actually great. It's a beautiful thing, but nevertheless, having said that, I think we both agree that this is the thing of this month, is this conjunction, is this two joining together. And even on this full moon, you can see that there's an actual, what's called, it's an inconjunct, it's a quincunx. It's actually being triggered by the moon again in a way that you know, quincunxes are a weird aspect,
Mm.
but they can be very dynamic. Stuff can happen on quincunxes.
Yeah.
And things that, as you say, it's about what's not seen, you know, what's like just outside your, it's not straight ahead of you, it's just to the side.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes, I often think the quincunx is something that you kind of know about, but you're not looking at it. You know, there's that kind of feel to the quincunx. You need to turn your gaze there and deal with it sometimes. You know, so it's interesting that it's the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction that is potentially hidden. We need to turn our gaze to it, that full moon would be saying, wouldn't it?
The full moon would be saying, and then it will happen when the moon moves into Scorpio and our gaze turns to it. And the other thing is, of course, it's a semi-sextile to the sun in Aries, so it's like just there. It's really, you really can't see the things that are there, can you?
Yeah.
So the sun is turned its gaze away from that. When the sun gets into Taurus, of course, it'll get back into a sextile with that Neptune and Jupiter conjunction, that spot, and it start to trigger it again. But then, of course, Jupiter starts to go into Aries.
Yeah.
A whole nother story for next month.
Yeah.
But this is really important, this Jupiter-Neptune thing. And I think we discussed it at the beginning of this discussion, really. But I think we should emphasize it at the end as well, not to
absolutely
not to put that down, and to see also that it will not just be triggered by this full moon, but every time during the month, that every time something goes over that point, so the moon goes over that point every month.
Yeah.
What happens is that this conjunction sensitizes 23, 24 degrees of Pisces. Actually, it's 22, 23, 24 degrees of Pisces for the rest of, for a long time. And I think that we've just had a fantastic example of how a degree can be sensitized by outer planetary conjunctions for much longer than people think. Because this war broke out when Mars went over the conjunction of Saturn, that the point of the Saturn-Pluto conjunction that happened in January 2020.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I know.
So 2 years later is when it was triggered by Mars.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So just keep that in mind, that this is now a sensitive point.
Yeah.
What happens is, like, it gets softened or sensitized is the best way of putting it.
Yeah.
Not just now, but for a long, long time, because Neptune is such a powerful outer planet, and so is Jupiter.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed. And I do think these big conjunctions as well, they tell us, I mean, obviously they're going to be on a personal level, use that Jupiter-Neptune wherever it falls in your horoscope. This is the place to have hope. It's the place to have big dreams, but it also plays out very much on a collective level. And you see the themes. We've got the refugee theme. We've also got huge inflation. This is a bubble as well, isn't it? The Jupiter-Neptune. So you kind of, just, look around at what's happening in the world. You can see the Jupiter-Neptune. There was also the floods, weren't there, in huge devastating floods in Australia, this big wave, as the Jupiter-Neptune got triggered. So you can see the bigger themes of what's going on. But really, on a personal level, the Jupiter-Neptune is about hope. It's about faith, and it's about, being creative. It's about visualizing. It's, having a spiritual faith as well. So really use it wherever it falls in your horoscope. And I think, again, bring it back to where we started. It is about that connection. It's about connection. It's about unity and a compassion and kindness and caring. So I think on an individual level, it's about holding on to that and using it in a positive way, the sort of positive benefits of the Jupiter-Neptune.
Or allowing it in, in a way. It's not, it's more about going with the flow, because you can't go against it. Wherever that flow is kind of happening, very strong, a strong current is happening somewhere in your chart, and Jupiter-Neptune has opened the gates. And it may be a current, it's different for different people. It may be that you go and live by the seaside. I don't know. or you live on a big river. You move to a big river,
or you become a missionary, or
missionary, take up sailing. But it may also be that you have a big spiritual awakening, and this can also be true on a collective level. I mean, I noticed that, when it happened in 1856, there was a big great interest in spirituality of all kinds.
And I think, and I was going to say, I think I said this before, but I do hope that the people see this conjunction, and that there's going to be like a global meditation, or some way of marking it, because that will be the best way of kind of, again, really tapping into the power of the Jupiter-Neptune.
As you say, I think that it's a point that needs to be repeated. It's really important. It's already that we're here already, waiting for April 12th. Don't. It's not, April 12th is the actual moment, but these also are planets that don't have boundaries anyway. So, not only will they be close together for, weeks, they're like, I don't know, I want to say that they're both so porous as planets that they will be connected now for a long time, even as Jupiter goes into Aries next month. It's then drawn back to Neptune. It's like, I can feel it like a kind of, I want to say like a stretchy glue or something that they're now connected by. They're not disconnected. It's just that Jupiter is going to go off and do Neptunian things in Aries.
And comes back, doesn't it, into Pisces at the end of the year, November, December, just to pick up on those themes again.
Yeah.
I think we better kind of
wind it up, man.
Not get too boundless.
Yeah, exactly. Let's get those Aries, get your Aries going, Sally.
Yeah, okay, that's it. Bye.